I see all type of violations.
Tap, tap, tap in. An Afro-Latina activist reveals that she is actually a white Jewish woman who has been pretending to be black all along.
I'm just a bombalera. I'm here in El Barrio, East Harlem.
She published an open letter in Medium under her real name, Jessica Krug, writing about her experience as a white Jewish child in suburban Kansas City under various assumed identities within a blackness that, quote, I had no right to claim, she said. She also went on to say that I am not a culture vulture. I am a culture leech.
Is leech supposed to be worse than vulture?
Listen, I don't know why she said, I'm just a leech. Because a leech, okay, sucks all the blood.
So a leech is a leech can attach itself to you while you're still living, and attach and while you're still living and producing, the leech could just be on you, just thriving off all of that. Right. A vulture only eats a dead carcass. So what's the difference?
So maybe she's saying, I'm not eating you guys and biting off you guys when you guys are dead.
I'm just sucking your blood and letting you live.
Maybe that is why she was like, oh no, you guys not I'm not a culture vulture.
Yeah.
That's not what I am. I'm just a culture leech.
Yeah,
okay?
This
so
ain't piss. This is rain.
Right. So much better. So listen, I definitely had to go deep into the mind because I don't know what is going on, because this is definitely the second case that we know of. But clearly there are white women, I'm not sure, maybe there are white men out there doing the same thing.
So we were thinking, who could we speak to try to figure out what was going on in this woman's mind?
So we called upon David Hernandez, who is a clinical psychologist. And David, can you please give us some insight? What in the entire world is going on?
Starting to look like a theme here, right? Things are just happening more and more. It's starting to look like a pattern here.
It is definitely very interesting. Yeah. And alarming.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it really does depend on how you look at it. Of course, from the Black community's perspective, you ask yourself instinctively, why would anybody want to be us? Why would a white woman want to be Black? And I think that there's a lot of dialogue around this idea that Black culture really pushes the world forward. They're so innovative, they're so influential, and you see just all across the world, there's a theme that there's almost like an envy to be Black or embrace that culture, because it's synonymous with just being cool and hip and you're risk takers and things like that. You're trendsetters. So it doesn't surprise me that somebody who may be like the most recent story, Mrs. Krug, where she maybe is just not happy with who she was. She comes from a Midwest town, and somewhere along the line found herself identifying with more Black culture. And this is not the first time we've heard this in the public news. There was Rachel Dolezal, who also pretended to be a Black woman, and the truth came out later. And one of the theories behind it could be that a lot of white people they feel guilty about, or they hate their own legacy for the crimes committed to Black folks in this country, and really the history of this world. You see that many European countries colonized, enslaved, and just really were committed heinous acts towards Black people in this country specifically. And a lot of white people feel guilty. And so there's this concept of white guilt that is believed to occur in a person who feels bad about what their ancestors have done to the Black community. And in rare cases, and we're seeing that at least two now that have come to light, you see two women now who have actually gone a step further, deliberate steps further, to actually embrace and become this Black culture. And you still scratch your head as to why this is happening, right? It's really, really interesting from a psychological perspective. You sit and you do ask yourself why, but you also at the same time just want to hear from them, their reasoning behind why they do it. Now, from our perspective, Black culture, we're sitting there like, you're a lie. You know that you're fake. You know you're not doing right. Just be yourself, right? but there's some other force that's really driving these people to, they're so unhappy with who they are that they embrace something that they're not, right?
And you feel like that's coming from guilt.
Well, that's one theory, yes. So there's this idea that white folks are guilty for what their ancestors have done to the Black culture. And they're so guilty that they then, out of that guilt, some go one step further, like I was mentioning, to just then embrace that culture and become that culture and almost, try to undo the wrongs that their ancestors did by becoming a part of that culture and advocating for them even harder. So it could be that internally she feels that she's doing a service to the Black community by advocating for them because of that guilt that she has based on what her ancestors did to the Black community.
Absolutely. We know white folks have this savior mentality. They come in, they have to save you. They feel like you don't have any ethics. They go to third world countries. They want to save everybody. But it's like, we don't need you guys to come in and try to play the savior.
Yeah, that's a great observation for sure. And we see that played out in the media, in movies and TV shows, this idea of the white hero in stories all the time.
Any story you look at, they go into a foreign land. Yeah, they're your rules and things. I think it's called ethnocentricity or something like that. And it's like to judge a culture by your own standards without completely submerging yourself in their culture. Yeah. And I feel like they go around the world kind of doing that. And it's interesting to think that guilt is kind of the linchpin of that. That's interesting.
Well, again, I just want to emphasize that it's a theory, right? And there is some sense there. It makes sense to a degree. I also think that there is cultural appropriation, and there is an acknowledgement that Black culture really drives the world in so many aspects, in fashion and music. I mean, even in technology, we've seen how Black culture has really. They have been the driving force behind so many inventions that we never knew, that they were never given credit for, right? But it can come as no surprise that maybe white folks understand the influence that Black culture has. And so they figure out a way, they devise a plan, maybe it's a little bit more strategic, that they then would say, I am Black because that's probably the best way for me to get exposure. That's the best way for me to get any momentum on this move that I'm trying to make within my own career. So maybe it's not even based on guilt at all. Maybe it's a strategic move to culturally appropriate to benefit their own personal gain, to benefit their own career. This is just another theory to consider.
I mean, I think everybody, if that's the case, we can look at all these major companies that want to appropriate to show that they down with Black folks now. Everybody throwing some money out or saying this and all that, but it's like, it's a lot of lip service going on. But,
And we have seen, this would be no surprise that there would be white folks that want to take the credit and not necessarily give the credit where it's due and kind of take on the whole, the whole bulk of the credit. In this case, this woman, it sounded like she wanted everybody to think this was a successful Black woman, an intelligent Black woman.
Well, she actually claimed she was Puerto Rican and she's from the Bronx, and she has said that she was Afro-Latina. Yeah. Right. So, and she actually was an activist. She was known for going to bat for African Americans and Latinos. So it just really boggles me that you can go to bat for us as yourself. I don't understand how someone mentally can feel like, you know what? I am going to go ahead and darken my skin. I'm going to go ahead and knowingly fool you. Knowingly fool you for years. And professional wise, she actually was an associate professor at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. with areas of expertise including Africa, Latin America, and African American history. Now, George Washington University did come out and say, whoa, okay, we just became aware of this and we are investigating the situation, but we don't have anything else to say on this matter. But also, someone actually tweeted an op-ed about Puerto Rico that she apparently recently penned for Essence. So she is going around really doubling down, tripling down on this false narrative that she is Afro-Latina. And it's so crazy because somebody brought up that many people, it really just shows how you can benefit off of being African American. However, nobody really wants to be African American. They just want to fake it and get ahead. However, they don't really want that struggle, because when it gets to really struggling, I'm going to pull out and, oh, just kidding, I'm actually a white Jewish woman. Psych your mind.
This is what makes this concept of cultural appropriation so frustrating to the Black community, that you are okay with benefiting from the strengths of our people, but you don't want to walk the mile in our shoes. You don't want to struggle the way that we do. And that just doesn't sit well with us.
Yeah, she actually said, I am not a culture vulture. I am a culture leech. So she is just sucking out the greatness of African Americans and Latinos, and then pulling out. And so basically what ended up happening was she did not out herself. I just want that to be reflected. She did not out herself. Someone actually, two Latino journalists, I believe it was, actually outed her, and they went to someone else and was like, listen, you guys need to look into her. Just kind of like Rachel. She didn't out herself either. She was actually bombarded, and she was like, whoa, you guys know what's happening. So I don't know. I don't want to give her any play, Miss Jessica. I don't want to give her any play because I feel like it's further going into like, well, you can benefit from being African American because you're getting all this play, you're getting all this press. Even Rachel, she had her own like Netflix series, money, okay? Money from fooling everyone. And it's just ridiculous. So I don't want to give her too much play, but I definitely, is she clinically insane? What is that?
Right.
So as a psychologist, if I was assessing this case and I needed to give a diagnosis, I'd be very cautious with, what label I would put on her. One could consider something that's called dissociative identity disorder, which is formally known as multiple personality disorder. Now, I'm not saying that she has multiple personality or she has dissociative identity disorder, because without knowing enough information, I don't know if she meets all criteria, but it's something to consider. Is this woman, is she split? Does she not really know what she is? Does she believe that she is these other things? Does she kind of vacillate between different ethnicities or different races? We don't know enough. That is one diagnosis, though, to look at, to consider when looking at this case, for sure. I would say that's kind of an extreme, but there's also for the trans community, for example, there is a diagnosis of body dysmorphia, this idea that people are not happy with the skin that they're in, right? They don't feel connected to the physical attributes that they were born with. And there's this internal dilemma, even to the point of, feeling suicidal and things of that nature. So that would be something to consider as well. Does Mrs. Krug struggle with some type of dysmorphia where she's just not happy with the skin that she's in? But I would need to explore that further with her to really know where this is coming from.
So would you say that she needs help?
I would say, absolutely. I would say that. I mean, cases like this are fascinating to me personally, because I always want to understand what in the world is going on in your mind. What is that path of logic that you took to get to this final conclusion about yourself? And the truth, but somewhere over here is now your truth. I'm fascinated by these types of cases. So I would love to sit and try to understand better, but I think she definitely needs some therapy and some help to understand this about herself. And
how can people who have interacted with her get over their shock and get over their mistrust of people? Because I would definitely feel slighted.
That's a great question. There's already and the two of you may already know this, there's already a distrust between the white and the Black communities from the generations of the hundreds of years of trauma that we have endured from the Europeans in this country, those that came and colonized. So this is deep rooted. There's a deep rooted mistrust already. So anything like this just exacerbates that level of distrust. So I already believe that you were about that life. I believe so much that you were for us. And now I have to come to grips with the fact that you lied to me about the core of who you were, your race and your ethnicity, and still wonder if what you were saying or what you were doing was genuine for our people, to move our people forward. It doesn't help her case any. I would imagine that many people that were close to her, that really trusted her, that believed in her, that looked up to her, are feeling some sense of violation right now. I mean, I don't put it past any of them to feel violated right now and lied to. And so it probably will adversely affect her relationships with these folks, this community, maybe for the rest of her life.
Wow. Well, thank you so very much, David Hernandez, clinical psychologist. Thank you so very much. How can people get in contact with you if they wanted to reach out?
You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook. David Hernandez Loves You. It's real easy to remember. David Hernandez Loves You.
So, let us know what you think. Does David have a point? Get in the comments and let us know.
Let's tap in with EL&EM.
Tap in.